see you. So that's what I'm going to do when I feel I've gone on too long. But namaskar, good morning, everyone. I realize that we have several community representatives between us, and we don't have enough translation facilities. So what I may do from time to time is also speak in Hindi if I remember enough, and I hope that will be okay. ये कहना चाह रही थी कि थोड़ा बहुत हिंदी में भी बात करूंगी ताकि हम लोग सब इस चर्चा में शामिल हो पाएं। जैसा कि अपूर्व ने बताया, मैं कई सालों से काम कर रही हूँ क्लाइमेट, फॉरेस्ट, ज़मीन और ख़ास करके लोगों के हक के लिए। और इसमें कुछ काम WRI के साथ किया। When WRI wanted to set up its landscape restoration program in India, I was involved with the initial design and setting that program up. Also had the opportunity to contribute to and collaborate with GIZ when we were thinking through what a soils policy for India could look like. And now working with a range of donors who are working on restoration, forests, land issues, and who are very committed to agroecological transformation. But the way I see the next 14 minutes is a chance to present personal reflections. ये जो बातें करने जा रही हूँ वो मेरी अपनी निजी ख्याल हैं, ये किसी भी संस्था से जुड़े हुए नहीं हैं। तो ये बात मैं बिल्कुल साफ पहले ही कहना चाहूँगी। कुछ हद तक जो मेरा अपना दृष्टिकोण है वो मैक्रो लेवल पे है। It's from the experience at regional, national, and international levels. But at the same time, in 2001, I moved to a really remote village in Madhya Pradesh and decided to make that my home. And I've been living there. And all the macro issues that we talk about are everyday issues on my land and on the land of people who are around us. And it is amazing to see what very simple techniques like mulching, composting, building rudimentary check dams can do, right? But it's also very sobering because I realize I have the power to do what I want to on my land. I don't have to ask anyone. I have the resources to do it. I have the access to knowledge, right? And it's a consciousness that there's deep privilege embedded in all of that, and the impacts and the changes that we are seeing in land that was earlier, say, just discarded as being wasteland, unproductive land, is phenomenal. So it is with that humility that I would like to just share a few thoughts with you in the next few minutes. Now we know that there have been many, many decades of research, experimentation, demonstration around ways to conserve, protect, and manage soils better. And at this summit, that's the focus as well. You know, how do we move forward? What is our, in this session particularly, what is our vision for healthy soils? Yet we know that if degradation is at the state at which it is, if more than a third of the country's soils are subject to erosion, if micro and macronutrient deficiencies are acute, then we do have a major problem at hand. And we have a problem that needs urgent redressal. And I don't need to say that because we all know it, right? And those of us who've read the concept definitely know it. And I think what we are all agreed on is that we need systems level change. It is not going to be enough to, play at the margins or work on smaller pieces of the bigger puzzle. We need an overall systems level change. Urgent change, transformative change. It cannot be incremental, right? Now the question is, how do we make this happen? And what is it that really needs to happen? And I would say that while there's a huge range of barriers that we need to address, opportunities that we need to leverage, there are three things that are top of mind for me. And the three things are policy prioritization, political will, and behavioral change that is supported by requisite incentives, right? And I want to talk a little bit more about these three. We know that improving soil health is part of a number of government policies, programs, schemes, right? It's included in the commitments to the UNFCCC, UNCCD, UNCBD, SDGs. It's all there. On paper, it's all there. It is part of many sectoral policies. Basically, it's everybody's responsibility, which essentially means it's nobody's responsibility and no one's accountable for it, right? And that is a problem. That is a very major problem. There's no real quick fix because there are jurisdictional challenges, right? Right from the landowner to the PMO. There are jurisdictional challenges around who gets to take decisions. We know that there are functional challenges because decision-making on land is really disjuncted. So when we talk about a landscape, and Min talked about how at least the block should be a landscape, we are looking at revenue land, we are looking at privately held land, we are looking at revenue forests, we are looking at forests, we are looking at a range of different land types, each with its own infrastructure. And when we overlay these systems, there is just too much institutional complexity that we're dealing with. However, there is scope for a nested synergistic approach. And we've done it in the past. We've done it in the past successfully with watershed missions way back in the 90s. And some of these missions, especially the Karnataka one, was exemplary in what it was able to achieve. Of course, there were problems. I'm not saying that there is a one-size-fits-all, but there are examples that we can draw from. And to think about how we make these systems of having an overarching framework with enough scope, flexibility, and trust in the system to allow different units to do their work and then still come together as a meaningful whole. So what we need is a committed cross-cutting overarching focus where everyone is accountable for soil, and it's not just that it's no one's baby at all, right? And we've paid lip service to it as much as we used to do with gender in the past. The other thing is that once we start thinking about these necessary approaches, only then can we have the landscape level approaches that we so desperately need for ecosystems like soil. Otherwise, what we're going to see is leakages. हमने एक जगह ज़मीन बचाई, दूसरी जगह ज़मीन खराब हो गई. हमने कुछ यहाँ पे एक जगह पे इनपुट्स दिए, दूसरी जगह उसका हमें परिणाम जो था वो जो चाहिए था उससे विपरीत मिला, है ना? तो until and unless we have these nested synergistic approaches, we really cannot move forward, and I think that's the basis of the systems change that we are thinking about as well. But having a policy, and supposing we have a policy, a dream comes true, GIZ was instrumental in advising on a policy comes through. That is not enough. We know that without political and administrative will, nothing is happening. And that political will and administrative will, unfortunately, does not exist at the level at which it should exist for transformative change to happen, right? इतनी रिसर्च है, इतना डेटा है कि हम लोगों की जो सॉइल हेल्थ है उससे न्यूट्रिशन पे क्या फ़र्क पड़ रहा है, उससे हेल्थ पे क्या हो रहा है, वेल-बीइंग पे क्या हो रहा है. Globally, we know that the hidden cost of industrial food systems is at least USD 12 trillion. And in India, this is estimated to be about 1.5 trillion USD. Numbers are not comparable because they're completely different methodologies. But this has to change. Right? If this is what the cost is, it's not a question of economics. It's not a question of not knowing the numbers. We know the numbers and still engage in business as usual. We know the numbers and are still going forward with industrial agriculture policies driven by Green Revolution. We know, and Min showed us a slide in the morning जिसमें दिखाया था कि हमारे एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में कितनी समस्याएं हैं और एग्रो इकोलॉजिकल अप्रोचेस के साथ उन समस्याओं को हम कैसे उनका कैसे निवारण कर सकते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी हम नहीं करते हैं. तो कहीं पे वो पॉलिटिकल विल हमारी नहीं है. सब्सिडीज को ले लीजिए. हमको सबको पता है कि सब्सिडीज से कितनी तकलीफ हो रही है. We know the negative externalities that are being imposed by subsidies, but it is such a tricky political issue that we cannot address it headlong. And now you know why I said I'm not speaking on behalf of any one organization or institution. There are vested interests, and there are very substantial power dynamics working against the transformation that we want. And it is organized vested interests, right? Whereas we are disjointed, we are scattered, and there is a real problem. Now, we know that political will can be galvanized, and there are at least 2 or 3 ways to do this. Crisis, and we are hoping that there won't be a crisis. But when the black sands, the black winds hit Beijing, depositing soil and sand in 1993, that was when the government of China decided on a massive scale restoration of the Loess Plateau, right? It was a major crisis. We don't want that to happen, and we hope that that doesn't happen. But there are others. There's a promise of political legacy of how netas will be remembered, right? There is a promise of economic gain. And we are seeing this in analysis that is now talking about reducing the use of urea and what that does for the balance of payments accounts for the country. We are talking about, of course, building voter demand. And voters are all of us in this room, and there are others as well, right? And we saw many of these play out. So when Mr. Subramaniam was speaking in the morning in the plenary about the AP movement, many of these factors did play out over there as well. It wasn't only about resources and ideas. So we need to generate that political will, and which brings me to my last point and the third point, which is around behavioral change and incentives for behavioral change. Min rightly pointed out who's at the center of decision making. It's farmers, farmers collectives, farmers organizations, movements on the ground. We talked about tenant workers, we talked about women farmers, right? And who counts as a farmer and who doesn't count as a farmer is also important to look at. We know that soil protection, restoration, management is a very complex task. Right? Yet, there is a need to start demystifying. What we know and what is published is a very small part of the massive amounts of knowledge that is already existing. Right? And we have to start demystifying and contextualizing. And it may seem like it's really difficult to do. But the challenge before us is, how in the world did we come up with the star rating system for electric appliances that we buy? 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, 5 star. Anyone can understand that in terms of energy efficiency. Is there a way that we have translate all the evidence that we have into systems that are so readily understood that a producer or a consumer can immediately use that evidence to take decisions? आप अगर ये खाद खरीद रहे हो तो आपकी जमीन में 1 स्टार, 2 स्टार, 3 स्टार कितनी उपलब्धि होगी, कितने टाइम में होगी? I mean, I'm talking through my hat here. But is there a way that we can actually have something that is very intuitive and simple to understand and that supports decision making down at the grassroots level, where independent farmers, independent landowners can really work together, right? And finally, we need incentives to catalyze this change. There are 2 things that we've been talking about. Priya in the morning and Min talked about how we are thinking about synergizing donor philanthropic monies coming in. But there is a larger conversation around how it's becoming exceedingly difficult to get international monies into the country, right? Even getting international experts to come into the country is becoming exceedingly difficult. And that's a reality that we are contending with. And it's not just India. So I'm not singling out our country or bashing it down. It's a reality across the world, right? So we now need to figure out within the country how we are going to get together for the changes that we want. And I think we have 3 fantastic speakers today. I'm not going to take any more time away from them. But just to say that, you know, the need for concerted, collaborative, or people said at least at the very least coordinated action, catalytic action cannot be underscored enough. And therefore, I'm really looking forward to today and tomorrow to learn more, and looking forward to seeing how all of this translates into further action as well.